Okay, oh, that's right. Thanks for reminding me, Grace. That's
No
important.
worries.
All right.
Okay, so I wrote these kind of in order originally of what I was reading first, so they're a little bit jumbled. But the first one, I know in the paper about sort of the social capital framework, you said that there are a lot of failed policies, specifically like I think with the government. So I was just wondering if you could maybe explain one or two of those failed policies and why they fail.
Sure. I think, I guess maybe overlooked policies than failed, but you
Mhm.
can use failed in a general sense. In terms of workforce development, we all know that the importance of social capital and helping young people get connected to the labor market. The unemployment problems of minority youth are tied to the unemployment problems of minority adults. So much of their access to jobs is dependent on the social capital they have. Our research shows that about 47% of people get jobs based on who they know, not what they know. Well, maybe in addition to what they know, but definitely it was the social capital that gave them access to a particular opportunity. Excuse me. When you have workforce policies that don't take that into account, right, and don't
Mhm.
strategically invest in how to utilize that asset to help young people get jobs, I think it's a great oversight. And how they can use it in three ways. One upon intake, right? Helping young people understand and audit the social capital that they already have. Beyond looking at emergency contact information, to look at who that family knows and who those family members and who those family members know, right? So who in the family is gainfully employed and who the family is connected to could be a main benefit towards the economic of opportunity of helping not only the young people in programs of all Americans in terms of looking inwardly at their own level of social capital
Mhm.
and helping them build that social capital or build upon that social capital, right? So social capital is the value of connections of individuals, organizations, and institutions. So for example, I see many young people who are formerly connected to other programs, so just our program or whatever program is not the first program they came into, then why aren't we strategically looking at how to help young people reconnect to that other program where hundreds of thousands of government dollars went into in terms of maximizing what that young person can get out of that relationship with that previous program, even though that previous program relationship could have departed on a bad note, right? That young person could have got kicked out of that program. As a program operator myself, I can tell you that no program ever wants to turn back away a young person, and they could provide that ongoing support. So that's the first one, upon intake, helping them who they know, what they know. Number two is helping young people get to know more people, helping them to build social capital with people who are more probably what I call bridging ties, which are people they may be unlikely to encounter in their normal lives. And what strategically are programs doing around that? Now, yes, programs are, as part of the workforce legislation, having to try to provide mentoring, right? But
Mhm.
mentoring, we know for at-risk populations is very hard, with most of those mentoring relationships terminating within the first 6 months because of the difficulty of engagement. Social capital building is not as intense as mentoring, right? Because so much of the onus of the social capital relationship comes from the young person acting as a giver, not as a receiver,
Mhm.
right? So for example, Grace, if we were engaged in a social capital relationship, then my mentors, or excuse me, or my program staff would ensure that I'm doing something to constantly give to Grace. So by the time I need to activate Grace, right, or mechanize Grace to assist me, Grace has developed a good understanding of who I am and why and maybe ways she could help me at that given point of time. And then I think the final part of, and I'm just going through it quickly, the final part that they're mixing is upon placement, all right? Helping young people get jobs, looking at utilizing social capital, but also
Mhm.
making sure that your former graduates understand the importance of building social capital with their employers, right? So as a graduate of my program, Grace, and I know you're in school, I would say as yours college, right? What instruments am I giving Grace so she can keep connected with the people where she interned, How am I incentivizing Grace to keep in contact with the place that she interned? How am I working with Grace so she can self-discover the importance of staying in contact with the people you intern? So we have young people participating in the summer job programs. The summer's over and they never stay in contact with their work experience supervisors because they weren't taught to do so, nor were the financial investments made in giving the young people resources to do so. And most resources like LinkedIn are just really not appropriate for young people. So that's one thing we want to do at Social Capital Builders. We have a $250,000 package that we're looking for funding to create our social capital building application, where young people would have limited contacts with 6 people who would help them building that social capital process. So I know that was a long question, but hopefully that gave you an example of 3 ways that workforce programs could actually utilize social capital to improve outcomes for young people.
Yeah, definitely. My second question was, can you just give like an elevator pitch of the Social Capital Building Institute, like kind of like a little blurb?
Well, the Social Capital Builders Institute is a process to train workforce service providers as well as youth service providers in general in how to utilize social capital as a means of connecting young people to economic and educational opportunities.
Okay. And then do you have an example, I guess, of like some sort of success story or business that you worked with or young people that you worked with where you really thought that they implemented the Cardi thing and the 3 sort of things you listed?
Oh yeah. So this is an not even recent, this is an active success story.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm dealing with a program that works with justice involved young adults ages 18 to 30. And it's in Schenectady, New York. It's called the Seat Center. And this is a wonderful program. It's called Be the Change program. And what Be the Change does, it provides young people with a 4-week social capital development experience. And after they finish that 4-week social capital experience, they engage in various aspects of the program like internships, job training, and education. So the 4 weeks are really to help the young person get an understanding and prepare themselves for future job training or workforce success. So in the program, we engage young people in the social capital building process. And here's where the story comes in. So we're in a group setting talking about social capital, and we ask young people in the social capital building movement, if there's a company in your local area where you would like to work, where would that be and why, right? Mm-hmm. And that's important because we want to show the young people that we have strong labor market connections to these companies. Mm-hmm. Right? So for example, if they all want to work at Amazon.com, right? Us showing that we have a strong connection to Amazon.com would probably increase the likelihood of their participation and completion of the program. And I think most of people would agree with that. So in doing so, when the young people started talking about GE, the casino, Bellevue, labor supply, lumber supply company, and these companies came up in the area, when we went to the next part, like how many people know people who work at these companies, every young person had a social capital connection to somebody in those companies. And you should have seen the eyes of the young people. They didn't need us to get them the connection. The connections already existed in the group. Somebody's uncle worked at the casino. Somebody's aunt worked at the Bellevue place. Somebody's uncle was running that construction company. And when they saw the power of that, you should have seen it. It was just like if we could have had that on film, I think it would transform the whole workforce system, because no longer is it a pipe dream to work for that company. The person sitting next to you is the person who could help you. So now we're going into how to make those connections and how to utilize those connections. But I think that is the case all over the country, that young people and adults already know the people who are going to help them get the job. We just don't act like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. And so kind of jumping off of that, who do you mainly work with? Is it companies that you're trying to transform their culture, different government programs, or the youth in the bounded networks, or is it kind of equally all 3?
Well, yes. Well, no, it's usually nonprofit organizations, programs that
Okay.
serve opportunity youth ages 16 to 24 who try to help them get into the labor market. So those are our main
Okay.
clients, the programs themselves. We do want to work more with workforce development systems so they can spend more time understanding a social capital framework and having a social capital framework underpin their organization, so they make sure that they're doing these things, as well as companies. We have done some social capital building work with companies, and I'm realizing how important it is because, well, research already shows that companies that have high levels of social capital, where their employees feel that they're given meaningful contributions, have a higher rate of profit and higher success rate and lower turnover. So giving a company an opportunity to figure out how to share their social capital with the young people in their cities is so important.
Mhm.
And I think it would lead to great community will of or community perspective of these companies. So take Starbucks, for an example. When the racial incident happened in Philadelphia, they mandated what? Training, right? We're going to do racial sensitivity training or implicit bias training to sensitize our workers about, the plight or of young African American males or Latino males and females. Well, that's great, but why not also sensitize your staffing by having them share some of their social capital? And that's where social capital gets so important for us, because the definition of social capital is five things, right? Five key elements, and we call it CARDI: compassion. So what does it mean to have compassion for another? As well, what does it mean to have self-compassion? And we do work on that, right? We do work with helping an employer understand, Johnny gets to work late every day and you finally call him to office and fire him. But he always says, you always ask what's wrong with me, but you never ask what happened to me. And then we take the staff through an exercise where they learn about compassion. The same way we do that with young adults. Assistance, right? How can your employees, beyond compassion, which is a willingness to address the struggles of another, really take action to help somebody? And sometimes people think that assistance means, writing a check or becoming a mentor. And it's not that complicated, right? And helping companies understand the many different ways of getting involved and providing assistance. And then there's reciprocity, right? Looking at how can the population you're serving assist you in the process. And we do things like the reciprocity roundup, where companies get to explore the power that they never thought they had of engaging this population. I'll give you a specific example. So let's say a company's dealing with, we're having a real hard time finding qualified workers for our construction site. Well, clearly the young person is too young to get a construction job, nor do they have the skills training, but they could help that company in recruiting construction workers because they have social capital too. And if the young people is assisting the company, then what? The young person is now a giver, not a receiver. And we know there's tons of benefits that come with the act of giving. And the final two are trust. How do you develop trust with one another, right? What is trust? And how do you develop trust with the population who may not trust you? And let's talk about the police department. They missed that boat a long time ago, right? And then the last one is information, right? Social capital is the equal and consistent sharing of information between two parties. And our relationship is an example of social capital, because you're sharing information with me and I'm sharing information with you, right? Information that could benefit you professionally and information that could benefit me professionally, right? So, and we're conscious of that. So I think when we help companies analyze those five aspects of social capital, they'll realize that they're not only having a better community impact, they're having not even a staffing impact, but they're having more of an impact on increasing their ability of their teams to better work with young people who so desperately need more social capital in their lives.
Okay, so just be clear. So you work with young people through the nonprofit programs that you're assisting, but do you also have your own programs, or is it through those other programs?
Through those other programs. So
Okay.
we're mainly a technical assistance provider to programs, and we work directly with young people as
Mhm.
well as staff. But I think most of our work is with staff, training them on these concepts, and then letting the staff implement some of the concepts, and then assisting them if they run into any difficulties or challenges.
Okay, that makes sense. Um, so do you plan to grow the programs that you offer in the near future to add anything else soon or within the next year or so?
Yes, that's our major goal. Our goal is to, well, one of our major goals that we want to develop social capital sites in about 10 cities.
Mm-hmm.
So we're looking for like about $3.5 million for 5 years of funding to implement it in test cities so we can get some strong data to support the process and the development of the process. We feel that this is the most underlooked area of workforce development and applying these principles in specific cities at different programs throughout the cities, as well as different corporations. We want to see the impact this will have on the long-term labor market outcomes of young people. But here's what we know. We know that 50% of young people come out of these programs and get jobs based on who they know, right? The program is not necessarily getting them the job. The young people get the job and then they go out there and the program goes out there and it gets the placement information that you got a job. So if young people are already getting jobs, so we already have a 50% placement rate because 50% of them are placing themselves, right? So how can we utilize that fact and increase the efficacy of these workforce programs to let young people build off an asset that they already have? And I think that's some of the research that's not being done, is how many students are getting jobs on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And why are they getting jobs on their own? And the potential of that, Grace, and I just want to, warn everybody that social capital could be a negative thing as well. Because your social capital, if everybody in your social capital is in the low wage labor market, then guess what? You might get stuck in the low wage labor market.
Okay.
Helping young people understand that fact, right? So in essence, that the building of social capital is imperative for your economic opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we see. We see young people getting jobs back at Burger King or Foot Locker or wherever they're working because they're connected to those social capital assets. And that's how people get jobs, right? So being honest with that and saying, hey, maybe the true nature is we have to help people build social capital. And a big thing between social capital is not networking. Now, everybody says, no, this is not networking. Networking is an activity. Social capital is focused on the outcomes that I share with you around those CARDI objectives before.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That I don't say I have, I don't say I have network with Grace. I say I have social capital with Grace, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that implies that value in that relationship.
Yeah. Oh, so I know that in a couple of some of the literature you sent over, you said that jobs that are acquired through referrals tend to have less discrimination and higher pay, and I was just curious as to why.
Real simple. Like, so if you know somebody, if I'm applying for a job and Grace, you tell me about the job, I don't have to deal with the commensurate with experience. What's the word? Or salary negotiable, right?
Yeah.
Because more than likely you'll tell me, hey, this position was paying this amount. That's how much I was getting paid. You need to look out for it. And now you know what to ask for. So I'm in a better leveraging position or negotiating position because I have knowledge of the previous salary. What was the second part? You said discrimination?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, definitely. First, if as a Black male, and unfortunately, we know racism is alive and well. By my social capital asset, letting you know who I am. I'm not saying, oh, he's a Black male, but hey, man, Ed is a great dude. Man, I've known him for years. Like, I'm automatically addressing some of those biases that you may have in your head about this person. Think about the
Mm-hmm.
police, right? So no matter how I look or how you perceive me coming in the door, you'll already have recordings in your head about who I am, right? And that is and think about it. My name could be Mustafa, Yo Utube. And you're like, oh man, this guy is, or Shaniqua Gonzalez. We know that people with African American sounding names tend to not get the callbacks based on research. If that person has some information about who this person is, if they have a high CARDI score with that person, it's more likely that they will get the call back. It's imperative that we look at social capital as a tool for reducing racism, reducing discrimination, and homophily. And homophily is just the fact that like tends to refer like.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you're going to prevent that is by implementing some type of social capital. Let the social capital in and let the bias out.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Um, could you define what a bounded network is?
So a bounded network is kind of like when we look at different types of social capital, there's three types but we really focus with young people on two. There is your bridging capital, and then there's your bonding capital. And your bounding capital are people who are similar to you, right? And that's a real important part of social capital, right? It may not be so important in terms of getting you those better jobs, but when you need that support to make it through the day, when you need that immediate job, when you need that immediate helping hand, you turn to the people who are like you, your bonded social capital, those bonding capitals. So that's your bonded network. And I hate using the word network. Those are your bonded connections, right? So
Mhm.
yes, you should always build those connections, right? Your bridging connections are people who are maybe unlike you, different class, different race, who can expose you to opportunities that you may not normally be aware of or ever be aware of, right? So it's a good sense to have both of those in your both of those elements of social capital in your repertoire. Now, one thing we are concerned about, and this is with workforce programs and even educational programs, when we ask program staff to identify the 10 services young people need in their cities, right? And they talk about housing, job training, mental health, substance use, healthcare, and they go on and on and on. And then we give them our assessment to name one program in their city that provides that service and to name one person who works at those organizations. Only 50% of the staff can name 5 or more of the services of organizations, but only 10% were able to name more than one person who works there. So that means 90% of the people we survey couldn't name more than one person who works at an organization that is key to providing the services that the young people who they work with need to survive. So what it shows us is that nonprofit organizations are not spending enough time helping their frontline staff build the social capital that is needed to serve the community. The director may have it because the director's at all these meetings and they know, but the frontline staff doesn't. And you hear so much from the Department of Labor and everything else that we've known this for so long that give a warm handoff. Well, a warm handoff, a referral talking about, requires a warm heart, and that's why it's so important to help your frontline staff build that CARDI. We talked about what CARDI is, that social capital with other frontline workers so we can better serve our community.
Yeah.
Major, all these youth councils and workforce boards, millions of dollars being spent on something that's not being effectively done or being effectively utilized.
So, do you ever check in kind of? I'm sorry, can you hear me? My brother decided to start playing music.
Yeah, it's cool to me. I like it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So do you ever kind of do a check-in after the program is completed, like after a few months or after a year to see how they're doing, or is it kind of done after you've worked with those programs?
Well, it's kind of new. So social capital training is new. And unfortunately, we haven't had the resources to provide long-term. So that's why we want to develop the pilot programs. Usually, people pay us $3,000 to come in and talk about that, and that's done, right? And no
Yeah.
one's really making that investment. But from the anecdotal information I got from tons of programs who received the training and who try to implement pieces of this in their programs, the results have been phenomenal in terms of the approach, the connections they have, and the engagement of their students. Because now, that missing workforce element that everybody knows is out there, that when you don't talk about it, and to me, is inherently racist. If you're not talking about the majority of people get jobs based on who they know, we really need to take a look at who you know and
Hmm.
and who likes you and the reasons why they like you or they don't. And maybe one reason they don't like you is, of course, they don't know you, but is because maybe your race. Then I think it's inherently, at best, maybe an oversight, at worst, outright racist, and
Yeah.
that we have to really be honest with all job-seeking communities about the value of this. So, for example, we just trained the entire senior citizen corps of the AARP.
Oh, wow.
on social capital. So we had about 80 programs there to learn about social capital. It was a little $3,000 training, and that was it, you know. But like now, if they're able to receive substantial support. Here you're talking about older workers who spent their whole careers like working and giving back to companies, and now they're in their senior years, they're looking for jobs. You know, these are people who we should really thank them for their service to this company. They can't find jobs. Are we really going to tell them to put in an online application when they have 60 years of social capital, 50 years of social capital building, and no one is helping them audit their social capital? And then somebody said, well, what if they don't have like the family members? Well, I didn't say it has to only be family members. This person has 50 years of work experience, right? Or some type of experience, and have valuable connections. So it's better to go inner than outer, and then help that young person figure out who they know in establishing connections. Because remember, the social capital relationship, Grace, is when I'm a young person in a program, and I start day one. You want them to come in with 6 social capital assets at day one. And every month I'm in this 12-month program, right? You are assisting me in updating my social capital connections about the progress in the program. Oh, Ed learned how to use a hammer. Oh, Ed got his OSHA 10 certification. Oh, Ed went on a great project. Ed does this. So month 12, what position am I going to be in with those social capital assets at the end of the month? Excuse me, at the end of the training program. I'm not going to be looking for a job is going to be looking for me. And is that beyond the capacity of our system to do something that simple? I think not. I think it's the lack of vision, and it's the lack of investment in strategies like that. Because there's no way a young person there's no way the credential should ever come before the connection. And helping a young person sustain a connection with thousands of adults who are, I mean, my work with youth advocate programs shows that there are hundreds of, and youth advocate programs is a program that serves justice involved youth, some of the highest risk justice involved youth throughout the country. And they created a program, and I think youth advocate programs is the best exemplar of this model. Because they created this program where the highest risk young people get to speak to these opportunity advisors who love sharing labor market information with them. You know, and if youth advocate programs could do it for the highest risk, you know, most workforce programs should be able to do it for their populations.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess actually you sort of answered number 9 because you said that you mostly work with programs. So I guess how do you kind of outreach to those programs that work with the different at-risk youth?
Well, it's all social capital. So it's all word of mouth. They hear about us, they call us. We don't have any marketing or anything. So it's just really just social capital. They hear about it, and they call us up, and they're tired of, tired of being different. I mean, tired of being 8-track in the MP3 world. They want to do something different for the young people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But they normally don't have the resources because it's not a recognized element in the workforce legislation. So like if I was offering financial literacy training, they'd be like, yeah, we could do that all day long. But social capital building is not a recognized element, so they really can't spend the money on it like they should. And I think social capital is equivalent to, or maybe even more important than financial literacy, because everybody would agree, like, you want to make sure that you understand how to spend your money, right? You want to make sure that if you die, you leave your assets to your children, right? But no one talks about how to spend your social capital, right? No parent talks about, when I die, how am I making sure my social capital leaves to my children? And for every gainfully employed person a young person has in their sphere of influence, that person is worth $2,400. So like, Grace, I am worth $2,400 to you. And you're like, well, how is Ed worth $2,400 to me? Well, guess what? I could introduce you to somebody who could possibly give you a job opportunity in your state. If you want to get into the youth service community, I am definitely the guy to know, right? I can help you get something published, right? So when you think about that economic value, and if you're making $40,000 a year, and if everybody's worth $2,400 and you get 6 gainfully employed people in your life, you just increase your salary hypothetically by $14,400.
Hmm.
That's a major jump in salary for just maintaining positive connections with 6 people per year.
Uh, so when do you think, I guess also this is sort of related mostly to the programs you work with, but like what are the median ages for, or like the mean for people sort of starting these programs? Like how young are they, and then how old do they usually go up to?
I think the age ranges from 16 to 24, with probably the average age about maybe 19 to 20.
Okay. Um, and then what is the best way to connect with your company or your business during quarantine?
Definitely, everything is virtual now. So, connecting, sending us an email. If you're interested in the social capital training, we definitely do social capital training, online. We love being in person, but I think that won't happen for another few months. So we can offer tons of different programs online, but also we try to demonstrate it. I think it's not only it's not a virtual program. It's kind of a philosophy of initiation. Like, how do we really initiate your organization or your funding community into an understanding of the importance of social capital? So, as you know, most of our work, when we share our curriculum or lesson plans, we always build that social capital component into it. Like in our summer job program, it's more about, yes, we're teaching the young people about resumes, but guess what? Every young person knows somebody in their family who has a resume,
Yeah.
right? So if that person has a resume, that means what? They were able to complete a resume. So why are we teaching young people about something that the skill already exists in their community? It's probably more important to connect the person to the person who did the resume and solidify that connection, because they're not going to be in the Social Capital Builders Institute every year. They're
Yeah.
going to be in that community with the people who care and love them every year, and turning them to turn to their cousin, their uncle, their aunt, or their neighbor who did a resume, who knows how to do a resume, who can help you print out your resume, right? That's so much more important, right? And I think we've missed that, right? We missed that when you talk about an asset-based approach, and that's why I like working with youth advocate programs, because they always want to come at with a youth and a family as an asset-based approach. Yes, you may be facing conditions of extreme poverty, but we know that, and we don't even know, but we will work with you in self-discovering those forever people in your life, and that's what they call them, the forever people, who will be there for you and help you connect with them, because we will not be with you forever. And I
Hmm.
think once people are more honest about that, then we will be looking at social capital as a way, as a key way to get young people connected in the future.
And then also for the summer youth program, are you talking like in general, like there are summer youth programs, or do you have a summer youth program?
Yeah, so we have so we're operating some youth programs for different areas of the state, scale of the country. So, for example, in Howard County, Maryland, we're operating their summer youth employment program based on that same premise. Our job is to, one, we're going to educate the young people on the importance of social capital, plus all the other things we do about youth development. But after each session, they have to go out in their community, make a connection to who we call an opportunity guide or an OG, right? Oh, the kids like, oh. And your OG is a person with specific skills or information or training in a particular workforce area. And then the beautiful part of our model is that now, and Howard County saw this, and now young people have to share their resource and their information with all the other young people in the program. So that's kind of these are all justice involved young people. So that's kind of a restorative justice, right? Not all young Black and Latino young people have to clean up the streets or paint park benches to give back. They can go out there and get labor market information from their assets and share that labor market information with their community. And why can't we do that? Because you never know what's going to help a child. And that young child may hear about an occupation they never dreamed of. And that might be the spark, Grace, that sets that young person on fire. And we have to do that for these children.
Yeah.
I want to connect them all to the police department, because the police department needs to see these kids as something more than what they see on TV, because maybe they'll start shooting them in the back.
Yeah.
Excuse me for that, but I'm just a little.
No, I mean, you're right. Um, what? Oh, so what was your inspiration for joining this field originally?
Well, you know, and I never really talk about this in my seminars across the country, because I'm very careful about the influence I give to young people. So, but I was a young father, right? I had my first kid at the age of 20. And I remember looking for a job, right? And, you know, I wanted to be a responsible father. I wanted to do right for my daughter. I didn't even know she was a daughter at that time, right? Just knew my baby was coming and I got married. I wanted to take care of my family, but I didn't have a job. So I went looking for a job. I did everything. I put on this nice shirt, the best I could. You know, I didn't really have too many people telling me how to get a job. And I went to all over the place. I applied for all jobs I wasn't qualified for, and I applied and I applied and I applied. And then I went into Wendy's, right? Because there was a job for an assistant manager paying $17,000 a year. And in 1982, this was some good money, you know, and they had benefits. So I went into Wendy's and I took a test. And then I remember the manager sat me down at the little station, offered me a drink, and said, "Mr. DeJesus, we would love to hire you, but there's only one problem. You want to go to college. And to work here at Wendy's, you need to work rotating shifts. Because I need an assistant manager who can cover many different shifts." So I resigned to drop out of school, not to go to college, and to take that job at Wendy's so I can be a great father to my child. And my daughter, she just gave me a grandson, and you know, I have more kids now, but it's just such a beautiful to think about. So when I was going home, right, this is such a true story, man. When I was going home that day, I ran into my best friend, Brian, right? Him and we grew up since we were children. Best friend, we boxed together at the Police Athletic League. You know, I was over his house on the weekends, chilling out. You know, we used to play basketball over the Bronx and all types of stuff. And I told us, "Yo, Brian, man, you know, I got this great opportunity to get this job, man, take care of my wife, have my baby. And the only thing I got to do, man, I got to drop out of school." And I remember my friend Brian, he goes like, "Ed, hold up, wait a second. Yo, you got another move, man. Let me go speak to my dad." He spoke to his dad. His dad called me up, and the man just recently died from COVID-19 a few weeks ago, Mr. Ed Dowd. And serious true story. And Ed Dowd called me up and said, "Ed, this is Brian's father, Mr. Dowd." I said, "Hey, Mr. Dowd, how you doing?" He was like, "Ed, I want you to call Shirley Gray at the Human Resources Administration in New York City. She'll have a job for you. It's working in the homeless shelters. All right, give her a call. Let me know how it goes." I went down to HRA, met Shirley Gray. She gave me a job working in the New York City shelter system, making what? $17,000 a year with better benefits than Wendy's, right? Working the 12 p.m. to 6 a.m. shift at a homeless shelter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to leave school because Edward DeJesus would not be here if I didn't get that job with Miss Shirley Gray and Mr. Dowd. I would not be who I am. And what is amazing to me was that I already knew Brian. My mother had a beauty shop on Fordham Road. His mother was my mother's best customer. No one told me to reach to the people I already knew.
Mm-hmm.
And then it hit. I said, we are not, and this was when I was, 19, 20 years old. So all my work has seen the benefit of helping young people connect to those who are not like them, to those from different ages, from those from different economic streams. And I swore to myself that if I'm ever going to create a program, it's going to have that as a philosophy. And now it's been more than a philosophy. It's a way of working with young people, that you have to recognize the importance of social capital and help young people build it.
Yeah.
And that's why my painting in the back, I always use it with young people, right? And so you look at the painting, it's the devil, right, playing chess with a young person. And everybody who looks at the painting goes, "Oh my God, you know, it's messed up, Ed, the devil won." And I'm like, "No, look at the painting again." And they look at it like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, look at the painting. The king has another move. It's not," and I got that from what happened to me, right? The game is not over. It's not checkmate, but everybody wants you to think it's checkmate. because if you don't know the game of chess, you would think that the game is over. But chess masters will look at that board and say, there's no way. In fact, the kid had the double in checkmate, right? And that's what we are. We're chess masters to show young people that they have other moves, and the main move is, well, one of the major moves is social capital. And then another thing about social capital, right? Think about it, Grace, right? Social capital is the premier element, right? Because what we know, it's not about a job, it's about work experience, right? Social capital helps you get the job, right? Number two, it's about credentials. Social capital helps you know what credential to get, right? And where to go get it. Because if you go to an employer and say, what credential do I need to be successful at this company? And where did the majority of your employees go get it? That's where you better go get it, right? Social capital is important in helping you learn about skills, because you ask an employer or somebody who works in that field, what type of skill do you really need to get a job, right? Social capital is so important for education. You look, you got parents who are trying to spend millions of dollars in trying to get their kids in colleges illegally, right? Social capital research has shown that young people with strong connections to positive, caring adults and support are more likely to complete college, because college is not about going to college, as you know. It's only about completing college. So if we're serious about having more kids complete college, we definitely want to help those young people develop more social capital. And finally, social capital is about social capital itself, because just a high level of social capital means so much more in your life.
Yeah. Okay. Can you explain in more detail like how you came up with the different activities and the processes that you put people through when they go through your program?
Well, so the process is one to increase their understanding of the social capital concept, right? Mm-hmm. But it's more of an activity of helping them connect to the social capital assets in their life and looking at the strategies and techniques that will help them build additional social capital, right? So it's not only, I always say this stuff is taught, this stuff is not taught, it's caught, right? So mm-hmm. helping people catch it means, so tons of exercises. It's like, okay, great. So think about a former person in your life who was instrumental for you, right? And you'd be like, oh, my coach in high school, all right? Well, send that coach a message right now and tell them thank you for being my coach, and see what you get back, right? And you're like, wow, like helping people understand that the power of being a giver doesn't mean what you have in your pockets. It means what you have in your heart. And just by reaching out to somebody and say, hey, man, thank you so much for letting me into your program. I know I messed up, but now I understand everything you told me made a difference. That person is still wants to help you. So even though you may think that you have eliminated many of the social capital assets in your life, you're sadly mistaken, because you have the power to restore that. And we want to show young people, especially those who have this type of experience in their life, the benefit of this. What's amazing is like the social capital thing is really understood by wealthy families. They want us to train their kids because they know that's the key for success. So it's built into activities that demonstrate it. It is not theoretical, right? It's about taking you out there. It's about, like with those staff, identifying those organizations and who works there. And if you don't know anybody there, it's your job in the next 30 days to get to know 2 organizations.
Yeah.
And then if you can't do that, then we got to really figure out why are you in youth services?
Yeah.
Or maybe what skill sets you lack to do that, and maybe help you get that. But then even after that, you're not doing it then. But in what I'm finding out with a lot of human service organizations, there's a lot of competition for funding, and it really prohibits the social capital building aspect, because that's the real work. Having frontline staff connect with each other at the ground level, and I don't see that happening like it should.
I guess you sort of answered this too, but I was just asking, how does your organization practice social capital? But you said that's sort of how you connect with people and join these programs, right?
But that's a great question. I never thought about that, because we say the same thing. I already know the person who wants to give us $3.5 million to build this up nationally. And I probably do, because I know a lot of people, but I don't ask. I don't go out there and utilize my own social capital to try to help people. So thank you for doing this and interviewing us. But it's so funny that we don't practice what we preach, and that we have tons of social capital, but I guess like everyone else, we're going through our thing of always working and doing the work than trying to get support for the work. So I think that's something that we have to perform better, me and my social capital builders.
Yeah. this is the last question. So how can people help social capital builders or help your organization?
Well, I think by applying more of the social capital building techniques to the work they do with young people, even family members. I think families need to do a lot of work around helping young people understand the importance of social capital. One thing I instituted in my family personally was when I have friends over, I mandate 15 minutes of that initial gathering for every of the adults at that table to go around to talk about their careers and what they do. So I tell them, sometimes I realize like people love talking about what they do, right? But I try to tell them to keep it under a minute. And then after, so let's say I have 5 friends, everybody talks about what they do before we can grab snacks or anything. Then I make the young people come up in our family, my sons and their friends, whoever's in the house, and they listen to them. Then I tell my sons, okay, so what I want you to do is to choose one of these people that you want to have a conversation with about their career, right? I'm trying to institute that as as a family ritual. And I think that should be something that especially African American and Latino families do with our children, because our children don't even know what our best friend does for a living. And that's such wasted social capital. And then I incentivize my children. I said, listen, if you want to get that, well, my son wanted these fancy iPod thingies for his ear. I don't know what they call them, earbuds, earpod. Well, it was like $139. I was like, chill, man, listen, you gonna pay me. You gonna pay me by building 6 social capital connects and holding them to that standard, right? And do you have standards for your children? So who are our 6 family members who you studied and what they do, and break it down to me? And if he can't break it down to me, he's not doing the social capital. When he already has that, he has uncles who are mechanics. He has uncles who are engineers. He got family members who are doctors. He got family members who are trash collectors. Don't tell me you ain't connected to a job, son. You already got that connection. Act like it and get those names and bring now. Not everybody's like me, right? And this is what I'm about that. But you think about it. You tell that to your kid too. They ain't, successful young people don't look for a job. Jobs look for them. Tell them to get. They already know the people who are going to help them get their job. Just act like it.
Yeah.
And if you're a parent and you got too much bonding, or you have a what called bounded network, then you got to increase your social capital on behalf, for the behalf of your child.
I have to say, going through all of this, because I've been sort of on my job search too, it's like there's a lot to kind of consider. This has been helpful. I think those are all my questions in terms of the literature. I was just I know you have to go to another meeting, but so for the event, do you just have sort of like an ultimate goal you want it to be about so I can start building out the outline for it?
Let me stop. Yeah, okay.
Like, would it be for people in the industry? Would it be for people who are not involved in this? They want to learn more?
I think there's 2 ways we can go with it. One, it could be for people in the workforce development industry who wants to learn more about this.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to expand it to the corporate community in the workforce industry who wants to learn how to use this tool, this approach, and try to find some type of dual objective that meets the interests of so workforce programs want to get more kids connected to jobs, and the employment community wants more qualified workers. Yeah. Right? So how do we present that to both of those? Or here's another thing, in terms of race, in terms of all these issues that we're dealing with, race and equity, maybe even from a social justice approach. Mm-hmm. How to utilize social capital building as a way to increase equity among low connected populations. So I think there's 2 ways we can go with that. The first way that I just mentioned, or the racial social equity lens. And I think it's up to you to figure that one out for me. Because I think we could try both, but which one do we go for that's going to get the best attendance, best dialogue, and best discussion? I think that would be the first one.
Yeah, I also think, I wonder if there's a way to sort of combine them. Like, you could frame it as we're talking about racial justice, which is obviously, always topical, but like right now, people are really thinking about. And then also that how that equity leads to corporations or to workforce communities accessing more people and then actually allowing them to use their talents. Mm-hmm. So I can try to frame it in that way so that it's kind of both, and then maybe make the focus more on equity so that it's I feel like that's more, people will be more responsive.
Yes.
Okay.
I gotta get to my other call.
No worries.
This was great. Let's have a follow-up, like maybe a phone call tomorrow,
Okay.
just in terms of procedural processes so you can move forward.
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
going to put together some key names that I think of people maybe you should speak to.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.